Welcome home, my leadership friends. Today, I want to challenge you to think about an idea that could change your life. And if you think about it, that it can change your life, it can. Henry Ford said, if you believe it can happen, but if you believe it can't happen, you're right too. The idea is if you want to be successful in business, you need to be ruthless. I saw this by a favorite author of mine and I thought, no, that's wrong. I've interviewed too many people up high in the food chain that are CEOs, board members, billionaires. Talk to them. They're nice and they're actually very compelling to talk to and decent people and interested in doing things the right way and for the right reason and for people, not using people as they're often portrayed. And it got me to thinking. After spending decades interviewing business owners and CEOs and executives and entrepreneurs and all the organizational leaders that I've interviewed, I've come to some very different conclusions. The most successful people that I've met were rarely ruthless, almost always smooth and kind, and made you feel like $1,000,000. They were often very kind, generous, patient, encouraging, demanding. Yeah, absolutely. They want the best out of you. And how can they judge you if you aren't giving them your best? Competitive, without question, strangely competitive. They used to say with Steve Jobs, the universe changed in his presence. They're focused on results, you bet, every day. But ruthless? Not usually. And you can look up what ruthless actually means, but it sounds like something that the warlord would use, not a business person in today's world. And there is a difference between being competitive and being ruthless. Our system of business, it means that you have to be competitive. You have to have competitive people pursuing excellence that want to get the word out about your product and help people understand why you're delivering great value to people. Ruthless people pursue victory regardless of the cost, right? Man, they don't care about much other than the win. We've seen those organizations where that person, he's great and he does well for a while, but pretty soon he ends up with some lawsuits from employees that didn't think he was doing things the right way and maybe didn't like the mob boss mentality that he was using and basically got him into trouble. If you look at the Gallup polls, about 20% of your employees are out to get you if you're at the top because they don't understand what it's like at the top, honestly. And so that's part of what I like to demystify in this podcast, the Beau Leadership Group Podcast. But ruthless people pursue victory regardless of the cost. But one should build people, not use people. And leadership is ultimately about people. John Maxwell often reminds us that everything rises and falls on leadership. I actually have a Maxwell shirt on today. But if leadership is influence, then influence grows through trust, not fear. So you can't build trust by being ruthless with people. They don't want to be sitting there wondering when the shoe's going to drop again, right? Years ago, billionaire investor, entrepreneur David Rubenstein was asked, what advice would he give young people? And there are other people that give this advice today, like they were the first to do it, but his answer surprised many people. He said to live by the oath of the Boy Scouts. And I've talked about this before, but one of the things to think about is a lot of CEOs in this world were Boy Scouts and often Eagle Scouts. And here it is. A scout is trustworthy, trust and pride. And remember, those are the top branding things globally, not just in the United States. Loyalty is the next one, right? Loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind. And you can look these up yourself and maybe put them by your desk. Obedient. What does that mean? To be a good leader, you should be a good follower. Obedient, cheerful, thrifty, somebody that's looking to save costs, not increase costs on extravagant lunches. Brave, clean, reverent. Think about that for a moment and those ideas and think about how they could help you. It's not ruthless at all. None of those. Not selfish, not manipulative. A lot of MBA education in the past was about how to be manipulative, but that's not what you want to be. And you don't want to be a dishonest. That kills trust, right? But it's just 12 simple character traits that if you tried to live out, it would be hard because it's 12 all at the same time, right? But ask yourself, would those qualities help someone build a great company? I would say absolutely. The answer is obvious. And again, if I sound like a broken record, the Gallup studies in the workplace engagement, year after year, one consistent finding emerges that most workplaces problems are people problems, right? And it's 1 in 5 people that are creating a big part of the problems. And what is a result there? A driver of that? Trust problems, communication problems, leadership problems. So, character problems. And that idea for the Boy Scouts and those 12 things is to build character. The leaders who consistently succeed and create environments where people want to be there and contribute that's where the companies thrive. And as a market researcher, usually I was very lucky because somebody that wants to do market research and get feedback on something, they want to grow and build. And so I had a false sense of what every company is like. And the companies that are growing and want to excel, they are usually market leaders. It's an amazing thing. But if the whole organization is curious about feedback and how they can grow and little tips on how they can grow, it makes a huge difference in culture. And the Boy Scout law sounds surprisingly modern today because human nature hasn't changed. And we still have these same problems, and maybe even more so because people are getting their information from social media instead of the Bible. And in the Bible, it says in Proverbs 22:1, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. So you got to choose to be this way. You got to choose to be honest. Your reputation compounds just like money. And we want, in Galatians, we read in 6.9, let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not give up. And got to have faith on that one and trust me on that one. And every day isn't going to be roses, but hang in there. And notice that phrase, in due season. It sounds a lot like patience. And that brings us back to Henry Ford. I've said before that Henry Ford talks about patience being the number one key to business. Now, before anyone writes me an email, let me acknowledge something. Henry Ford, if you judge him by today's standards, he was a product of his time. And you may be a product of your time and your culture and who you hang out with too. None of us are immune to that. Some of his statements and beliefs would be rightly criticized today. A lot of Freud's things would be rightly criticized today, but he did bring us knowledge about the subconscious mind and how that works. You can still learn from people that weren't perfect because guess what? None of us are perfect. None of us are immune to the influence of our culture, the people that we surround ourselves with. And in today's world, you may be in credit card debt trying to impress people outside of your family instead of investing and getting a return on your investment and investing in leadership and ways to improve your family. There are family dynamics and things that we maybe don't want to keep for our children and the next generation. Some of those things, Freud and Ford and other people, there have been people that don't accept other people and don't find value in everyone. And I think that's one of the biggest things that leads me into the leadership realm is because leadership is about others and it is about finding the value in others and that we're all different. And just because we have different philosophies, different things we do in our personal lives doesn't mean that we can't find value and work together and collaborate and move ahead. And guess what? It's not easy. It's uphill. So hopefully things like this podcast can help you to become more like the people we want to spend time with. We absorb attitudes, assumptions, and beliefs from the environments that are around us. So if you read the Bible, you might find a lot of virtuous things, but I believe Ford had a virtue in patience. When he was experimenting with agricultural products and soybean plastics because he wanted to bring the agrarian economy into Ford, he knew those manufacturing techniques would take a while and he had to work on those innovations that many people thought were just friggin' ridiculous, but he pursued it and he persisted. And Model A, those interiors lasted a long time and they were soybean fabrics. He failed repeatedly though, and he waited and he refined. He improved. Patience became a competitive advantage, not ruthlessness. Patience. How many times did entrepreneurs quit too early? Ed Milet talks about not quitting for one more day in a lot of his work because you're closer than you think. And how many leaders abandon a vision because it doesn't pay off in 6 months? In today's world, it seems like we got to make our investors happy every quarter, every day, every trading day. Patience often looks weak right before it becomes very powerful. So here's another thought. When tragedy strikes, many people immediately focus on evil, the destruction, the bad actors. The news has bad actors 7-1. Mr. Rogers once shared advice from his mother: look for the helpers when there's something bad that happens or something terrible happens. Look for those helpers. So what you focus on is what you get. It's what Tony Robbins has often said. And I've always loved that. Yes, there are bad actors in this world, but please do not be one. And the Boy Scouts may be too sweet for you. You think they're so sweet and sugary that you're going to get a cavity, but maybe 7% of people are creating all the damage. Don't be that person too. Maybe some workplaces have higher concentrations of negativity. Gallup suggests that's true, but leadership requires a different lens. Notice the helpers. You may not get rewarded right away, but be patient. Notice the volunteers. Be patient with those volunteers. They are a pain in the neck. They aren't paid. They have other things in their life. Notice the firefighters. Notice the teachers. Notice the people staying late to work on things and solve problems, and maybe even be thrifty like the Boy Scout to find that cost-saving measure. Notice the people doing the right thing when nobody is watching. It's hard to do if you're not watching, but notice who you will become. That's the key to all of this. It influences who you will become. So who do you want to become to attract the perfect mate for you, even if you're already with that mate? Who do you want to be to influence the culture with them? Who do you want to be to influence your partners, your teammates, your investors, so that you get to work with people you want to work with? It's amazing how many people end up working, myself included, with a group of people longer than they should have realized that these aren't people that care about other people, and left long before I did. They wanted crisis management. They were out to win. They were at times ruthless, some of them. Here's today's practical leadership tool. Think about, or even write it down, 3 examples of people doing something good that was completely outside your control. We often think about things being outside of our control as the negative things that we can't do something about. But what if it was a positive things you're finding? Not something you did, something someone else did. Because leadership is about others, right? Train your mind to notice trustworthiness, kindness, helpfulness, cheerfulness, the things that you want to have contagious in the organizations and with the people you deal with, the very qualities found in the Boy Scout law. And the Boy Scouts have that campground thing: leave the campground better than when you found it. Not just as good, but better. And you may discover that the world contains more people than the headlines suggest. And I will leave you with another thought. They did a study once that showed that the person that's most likely to clean up the water in an airport bathroom is the higher ranking managers, like the CEOs, because they know it only takes a few minutes to sop up that water that might get on somebody else. And they're thinking about the other person. And maybe that's how they got to be CEO, not because they're ruthless and greedy. And if you're a person of faith, here's a simple prayer. Lord, help me reject the bitterness, pride, fear, and selfishness. Fill me with wisdom, courage, patience, gratitude, and love. Help me become the leader who serves others well and reflects your character. Amen. Everyone should know now, leadership isn't about being ruthless. It's about becoming trustworthy enough that others willingly follow. And if you catch somebody saying ruthlessness is what you need to be, tell them we want to be competitive and aggressive, but not ruthless. Because in the end, the organizations that last usually are built by people who care deeply about both results and people. That's how you build longevity. That's partly why I believe many organizations die, is they're trying to be ruthless. Leadership is about elevating your image with God in mind. Bless your week.